Hello students, I am Balasri Prasad. I am going to discuss Unit 5 of Organizational Behavior for second semester BBA of Usmania University. Let us see the syllabus which we are going to cover: organizational culture, conflict and effectiveness. We are going to see a concept of organizational culture, distinction between organizational culture and organizational climate, factors influencing organizational culture, morale, concept and types of morale, managing conflict, organizational effectiveness, indicators of organizational effectiveness, achieving organizational effectiveness, organizational power, and politics. We'll see the definition of organizational culture. Organizational culture is a system of shared assumptions, values, and beliefs which governs how people behave in organizations. These shared values have a strong influence on the people in the organization and dictate how they dress, act, and perform their jobs. Let us see the factors influencing organizational culture. Influence of the founder, we call it as shadow of the leader. Size and development stage of the business, example startup, multi-site, multinational. Leadership and management style, organization structure, policies and practices. Employee management reward structures, example pay, bonuses, individual versus team rewards. Market or industries in which it operates. Working environment and nature of task. Example physical, office, remote working, flexible working, etc. External environment, example legal, economic, social. Attitude of organization to risk taking and innovation. Morale. Morale, also known as esprit de corps, is the capacity of a group's members to maintain belief in an institution or goal, particularly in the face of opposition or hardship. Morale is often referenced by authority figures as a generic value judgment of the willpower, obedience, and self-discipline of a group tasked with performing duties assigned by a superior. According to Alexander H. Leeton, morale is the capacity of a group of people to pull together persistently and consistently in pursuit of a common purpose. Types of morale. The following are the two types of morale. Firstly, individual and group morale. Individual morale is a single person's attitude towards work, environment, etc. Whereas group morale reflects the general attitude of a group of persons. Group morale is everybody's concern and may go on changing with the passage of time. Individual and group morale are interested but not necessarily identical. They have an effect on each other. The individual's personal perception of the present conditions may be high, but the group's perception may be low or vice versa. Secondly, high or low morale. High morale exists when employees' attitudes are favorable to the total situation of a group and to the attainment of its objectives. Low morale exists when attitudes inhibit the willingness and ability of an organization to attain its objectives. The words such as zeal, enthusiasm, loyalty, dependability denote high morale. Low morale may be described by the words like lack of interest, laziness, apathy, bickering, jealousy, quarrelsome, pessimism, etc. The next topic is organizational effectiveness. Organizational effectiveness is the concept of how effective an organization is in achieving the outcomes the organization intends to produce. The efficiency with which an association is able to meet its objectives. The main measure of organizational effectiveness for a business will generally be expressed in terms of how well its net profitability compares with its target profitability. Indicators of organizational effectiveness. Firstly, communication effectiveness. Did your employees understand, not just hear, your latest communication message? Do you have a measure for the effectiveness of your communications? Secondly, customer relationships. We are not talking about customer satisfaction. Oftentimes, a customer may be satisfied, but what is your relationship index with them? Focusing on customer satisfaction alone could lead to unprofitable customers. Sure, the customer is always right, but are they the right customer for you? Do you have a measure? Thirdly, employee satisfaction. Happier employees will lead to happier customers. Do you have an employee satisfaction index that measures absenteeism, complaints, turnover, and surveys? Fourthly, brand image. Brand image is a leading indicator of success regarding how people feel about your organization. Use market research and survey your market to determine if your brand image is rising or falling. Fifthly, distraction. Everybody has a job within your organization, but how much time do they spend on what they were hired to do? Do you have a measure for administrative tasks, quality improvement, and other management assignments? How much time is spent on those tasks management asks you to do but are not part of your job description? Sixth, trust. Do people believe in your organization or leaders? You could call this the food dragging index. Do you have a measure for determining your organization's level of honesty and integrity both inside and outside of your organization? Seventh, or customer frustration. Do you want your customers to have a consistent and beneficial experience with your organization? How do you seek out, count, and measure the aggravations, frustrations, and negative surprises that your customers experience as they do business with you? Frustrated customers will eventually abandon your organization in search of more pleasant vendor experience. Are you measuring customer frustration? 8. Supplier relationships. How easy is the supplier to do business with? Are they responsive to your needs? Is their quality more than sufficient? How do you measure your supplier relationships? Ninth, employee competence. This is more than just training hours. It is about actually learning something useful to your job. To do this right is difficult. Develop a competency matrix defining the required skills versus the required skill level. Then measure everyone's current skill as a percentage. The gaps indicate the training required to move the organization toward higher competence. Are you measuring competence? Achieving organizational effectiveness. Let us see how organizational effectiveness can be achieved. First, be clear about the organization's goals. Help employees understand their roles in achieving them. Managerial leaders need to set and communicate a clear vision, whether it's for the whole organization or just one team. People want to understand the part they are expected to play in the overall strategic picture and to have clarity about specific objectives and performance standards for their tasks. Second, ensure that the organization has the right number of levels of work. Too many layers create unnecessary bureaucracy and keeps employees feeling suppressed in their decision making. Too few levels, on the other hand, cause problems in communication and gaps in workflow. People's work roles can become overloaded with tasks that are either too complex or too routine for their capabilities. And this leads to frustration and third, make managers accountable for the results of their subordinates. This is a controversial idea. Not only are managers accountable for their own results, but also for the output of their direct reports. Fourth, give employees sufficient authority to undertake their responsibilities. There need to be boundaries, of course, and people have to be capable of making decisions based on the skilled knowledge and experience required. The frustration comes when we feel our bosses don't allow us or trust us to make decisions within the scope of our capabilities and we feel the fifth, create a culture of fairness, honesty and transparency. Employees need to feel that the organizational culture rewards honesty, encourages fairness, whether in recruitment, training or salary negotiation, and is open about changes going on. Sixth, design and maintain felt fair pay systems in the organization. Employees wanted to receive pay which was fair for the type and complexity level of the work they performed. An analysis of the accountabilities and work complexity factors in each role and at each level needs to be undertaken to provide a starting point for calculating felt fair pay. Seventh, make managers accountable for coaching their staff. Many exit interviews with dissatisfied employees reveal that managers often fail to support their subordinates to improve their performance or acquire new skills. Managers can be held accountable within their own performance evaluations for employee coaching so that it no longer remains an optional extra but a prerequisite to good managerial performance. Good coaching is simply about spending more time with employees, setting them goals, giving them feedback and support, and creating on the job opportunities to learn and improve. Eighth, develop your employees and create a succession plan. Managers may sometimes feel threatened by the idea of identifying and developing successors for their own roles. But failure to plan for succession will leave the organization vulnerable to unexpected and expensive changes. Ninth, set up organizational health and social facilities. Small changes can make a big difference. whether it's a new water cooler or access to subsidized healthcare or social facilities. An extensive program of facilities, gyms, in-house occupational counselors, and staff restaurant will clearly require significant financial investment and a thorough cost benefit analysis should be undertaken. 10th, create opportunities for employee feedback and participation. Managers are paid to manage and make decisions, but they don't necessarily have all the answers all the time. Employees who are invited to participate and contribute ideas are much more likely to accept decisions and changes if they feel they have had an opportunity for their opinions to be considered. Next topic, managing conflict. What is a conflict and why does it occur? Disagreement between people with different ideas or beliefs. It also defines it as a fight or a struggle. An organization is but a collection of people from different cultural backgrounds. They have different sets of values and ideas. Let us see what are the causes of conflict. Differing values. Example, conservative versus progressive minded. Differing perspectives. Example, limited versus broad, domestic versus international. Differing ideas, creative versus mundane. Differing styles of solving organizational problems. Differing agendas, sometimes hidden ones. Differing attitudes, rigid versus flexible. Differing objectives and goals. Differing circumstances. How to manage conflicts in an organization? Basically, there could be three situations in an organizational context: conflict with the boss, conflict with colleagues or peers, conflict with subordinates. First, managing conflict with boss. All of us have read the famous rule. Rule number one, boss is always right. Rule number two, in the case the boss is wrong, see rule number one. This is not to say that one has to be yes man all the time. Whenever you face a conflict situation with your boss, consider the following approaches. Firstly, appreciate wider perspective. The boss has wider perspective than you. Therefore, please consider whether there is something you are not able to visualize that your boss has visualized. Secondly, do not offend his authority. Every boss is sensitive to maintaining his authority. If you have a better idea, put it in a way, in a manner of suggestion. Avoid offending his authority. Third, evaluate the impact. Very carefully evaluate the impact of the wrong decision of the boss on your position in particular and on organization in general. Do not challenge his decision unless you have to. Fourth, avoid bitterness. If you have to differ with your boss, just register your point of view without making it. Managing conflict with peers or colleagues. Whenever you face a conflict situation with your colleagues, try some of the following approaches. First, communicate. Most of the time, your colleagues may be differing with you, either because they have not understood your point of view properly or you have not communicated clearly enough. Since you do not have any authority over them, enter into a dialogue and discuss the issue with an open mind. Second, conflict to cooperation. Work towards skillfully converting conflict into a cooperation. Strive to appreciate their point of view. Find out the ways and means to create a win-win situation. If you if need be, amend your approach and meet your colleagues. Managing conflicts with the subordinates. In this situation, you have the authority, yet you have to be skillful in managing the conflict. First, allow freedom to express. Give adequate freedom to your subordinate to express their views freely. Be patient. Listen to them carefully. Second, allow dissent. Dissent is natural. Manage disagreement constructively. Third, build consensus. Identify the positive minded persons in your team and convert them into the champions of causes. Provide right kind of support. Intervene skillfully to build consensus. Fourth, develop a common vision. Appreciate the fact that all your subordinates may not have the broad vision and perspective like yours. It's your responsibility to share your dreams and aspirations for the organization with them and make them appreciate this. Through discussion, training, and counseling, develop a. Thank you, students. If you have any queries, please send an email to balasriprasad@gmail.com or WhatsApp a message to 90590424889.